Welcome to Design Notes, a show about creative work and what it teaches us. I'm your host, Liam Spradlin. Each episode, we talk with people from unique creative fields to discover what inspires and unites us in our practice. In this episode, I spoke with designer Sang Moon, exploring how his ZXX Typeface, which was born from Sang's experience in special intelligence, tells a story that helps us consider our privacy and the nature of the information that shapes our lives.
I think we are unfree in a way in this society because we're always in the realm of overloaded information that are given out from corporations to the governments. And I think it really impacts our freedom of thinking.
In the interview, Sang and I also explore how accessible tools can empower users, how to approach design across a wide range of media, and the practical constraints that we all face as designers. Let's get started. Sang, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So just to get started, I always ask about the journey. So what do you do now, and what has the journey been like to get there?
So right now I'm running a design studio called YAW with two other good friends of mine, and they're furniture, space, and product designers. So we work on 360-degree brand designs from spaces to brandings to other collaterals. And apart from that, we also just started a new brand that's called Band of Colors. And it's a men's underwear and swim shorts brand. So that's what I've been working on in the recent years. And prior to that, I was a graphic design fellow at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. After that, I came back to Korea and worked as a graphic designer for these two big corporations in Korea. So one's called Hanwha, and the other one's Hyundai Motor Company.
So how did you get your start?
Actually, I studied on film and video first, back from high school, I guess. I went into design because I used to skate a lot, and listening to all this punk rock music, being able to adopt the album covers to music videos to other visual noises that I kind of got into. So I guess I was always interested in the graphics and the visuals that connected with me. So it was kind of natural for me to move on from film and video to graphic design.
I'm really excited to have you on today because, the philosophy of Design Notes is really about finding the common threads that run through different types of design work and the ways that we approach them from each discipline. And it seems like the breadth of your work is a perfect reflection of that pursuit. You've been involved in designing a lot of different types of things. So I'd like to hear about some of the projects from different disciplines that you've been involved with and the common patterns that you picked up through those experiences.
I really try to focus on telling the story and just going into the core essence of what this product has to tell, or what this brand has to tell, or what this photography, for instance, or space has to tell to the story. And I guess forming a bond of sympathy with the end users is what I try to focus on the best. And I think that has changed a lot comparing to the works that I've done in the past. Because before, I think we all designers have this ego because we just feel like we're still students at school. So after leaving school, I think it was a hard transition in a way, but I think it worked well in the end. And I'm still trying to work more on that aspect in trying to think as a non-designer, like how they would approach this outcome that I made and how they would associate it with their context. I think that's the common approach that I have in all the projects.
I'm interested in dissecting how you go about finding the story of a product and how that's formed.
So for instance, I guess one of the most successful projects that I've done was ZXX Typeface. I think it told a very humane and kind of silly idea, and I think it resonated with a lot of people in the way that I was telling a true story of mine in a graphic way and also in a casual but scary way. And I try to input my life into those projects in the way that I tell a story. For instance, ZXX was a story of mine where I was special intelligence personnel for the Korean military associated with the NSA. And I had an opportunity to tell that project in a story that was based with my own experience of how to extract information or special signal information.
Yeah, and I can definitely see through reading about ZXX that there is that like personal story component, but you also relate it to the people who are viewing it and saying like this is, we need to make use of the difference between technological and human perception
Right,
to keep ourselves camouflaged as much as we can.
right.
I do want to dig into that a little more, specifically as we move further into an age of machine learning and AI. It seems likely to me that technology might catch up with something like ZXX and learn how to read it. So I'm interested to know, A, like how your thoughts about that have changed over time since ZXX first launched.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also interested in discussing whether that too could be subverted, whether technology could be used to design things that fool technology.
Right. So there's been a lot of political changes in the Korean society where our democracy has been really challenged with the corruptions of all, like for instance, the National Intelligence Service getting into political and private life and kind of altering the mindsets of the citizens. I guess I haven't really been working more on this kind of projects, but I think it's always stayed in my mind to tackle this project or tackle these events in a different way. And after ZXX, I think people are kind of pent up with the status quo and the way that they don't think they could really do anything to keep their privacy private in a way. And I think there has to be more of a like fun approach to be able to make them use these tools, because what I've seen so far is that ZXX has been used only through the creative fields or the people who find what's funny about it or what's really working about it. But for the just regular people who are outside of the design field, it's hard for them to relate to it. So trying to push and pull between that creativity and finding easier way for them to use the tools might be a good way.
And is that something that design could accomplish? I think we know about the direct impact that design can have on someone's experiences or ideas, but using design to empower people in a more indirect way.
For sure, because for instance, like with the tools that Google's giving out, like all these free apps that you guys have, just for instance, like the translators or other free resources that are out there. When it's easy for a regular user to be able to approach it and use it in their daily life, I think it it's the power of design and it's the power of the technology that could reinforce them to be more private in a way. So I think that's the tool that design can really change.
I'd also like to dig into one of the things when I was reading about ZXX that you said was about articulating our unfreedom. I'm interested if this idea has manifested more in your work since then.
Not to the extent that I really wanted to, because I was working on version 2 of ZXX, which was going more in depth, where right now the camouflages and the other torting layers were, it was a 1 dimension typeface, but I was working on making 2 and 3 dimension typeface that could really create an endless permutations, but that kind of failed. So, but I do keep thinking about this, articulating our unfreedom, and I think I got inspired by George Orwell's 1984 and the Newspeak Dictionary. How when you start shrinking the dictions that we can use, then I think it really alters with the mindsets. So I think we are unfree in a way in this society because we're always in the realm of like overloaded information that are given out from corporations to the governments. And I think it really impacts our freedom of thinking.
I'm interested in the concepts behind ZXX 2.0. You mentioned two-dimensional and three-dimensional
Right.
typography. What would that look like?
So the idea was that when you type in a letter A, the letter A would pop up, and then with the algorithm, like a random layer would go on top of it. And if you want to go more, then another layer would go on top of it. So it's kind of challenging the way that humans could still recognize it as a letter A. But as you said, the machine would not be able to keep learning what this letter is because you're giving it different random layers on top of it. And I found out that this was possible to do with talking to other engineers, but it's a lot of work. So
Yeah. But that does kind of get at the idea of using technology to kind of subvert technology in new
Mhm.
ways. I'm also interested in, again, in the idea of the power of human perception versus machine perception. And I think that that's something that's still continuing to rapidly evolve. But have you developed any further this idea in a more broad sense of encoding thoughts and ideas into design that is only perceptible by humans?
That'd be really interesting. I'm always interested in challenging the visuals that the humans could encode and decode. And one of the other projects that I was working on was like decoding a JPEG. So working with the codes that are encoded in it and then just changing the different layers of the information to make it extract another JPEG, which keeps evolving and just challenging the way that we perceive an image. I didn't really have the chance to further that study yet, but I did think about recently I saw a Foco app which was presented in the Adobe conference. And it's really scary because it encodes a human voice and then you could really alter the way that the voice could make any sounds that you want. And I think right now we're moving from an image based or editing an image to moving images to voice now with all the AIs and voice recognition softwares that are really getting crazy right now. So my interest has kind of evolved from image torting softwares to voices these days.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point because as this technology continues to develop, we're moving not only to a place where it's important to distinguish between the visual capabilities of humans and machines to perceive things, but also whether the things we perceive are actually authentic. So, switching topics a little bit, I'd also like to know about Band of Colors.
Mhm.
How did that come about, or what's the story behind that?
So Band of Colors was kind of a random project coming out from three designers whose background is graphic designer, product designer, and furniture designer. And we were always interested in doing a business together. And we just thought about expanding our studio culture and trying to challenge ourselves into creating a commodity that hasn't been challenged or that could be disrupted at this point, especially in Korea. And we found out that all the designers were only focusing on commodities that could be wore or used in these outer layers. So, like first dimension visuals. But we want to create something that could be fun in a way that not many designers would tackle. So random, and that's how it came about. And while researching about the market, we found out that it was a huge, huge market that hasn't been challenged for like the decades, where this old corporations still own 60% of the market share. So that's how it came about. And I think also we wanted to create something that could enhance the daily life of every man and not just make a crazy looking graphic design or design commodity, but then something that could kind of be timeless and just be kept in their wardrobe.
Something I was going to ask about too is kind of where the patterns and prints come from
Mhm.
for Band of Colors. So it sounds like the material creates some of those constraints as to like what can be done in terms of design.
Right. And the design is, I think we have more than like 400 designs that we sketched. And yeah, just like you mentioned, because of the restrictions that we were facing with the manufacturing process, we had to deselect the best designs that we wanted to make and then kind of compromise within the fields.
Just because this endeavor seems fairly different from most of your other work, I want to know how you would compare this work to kind of your other creative pursuits.
I think it's really crazy that I mean, seeing the outcomes right now and knowing the journey that we were taking, I think the main difference is that as a design studio, we always had clients and we always had the design briefs that came from outsource. But for Band of Colors, we were our own clients, so we had to work on the finance, work on the marketing budget, work on all these other parts that were outside of design. And also with having 3 designers from different disciplines, we had to really come to a consensus of what this product had to look like. And I think that was a real challenge that we were all facing because we just had different mindsets.
So just kind of speaking to the difference in both visual style and process in Band of Colors compared to your earlier work, I'm interested in looking at the complete timeline just to wrap up, how your creative process has changed over time across all of your projects, and also where you see it going in the future.
Mm-hmm. So before I was working for different clients, and when I was a student, you had a lot of time to really tackle and research and try to study the contents to the fullest amount that you can. But I think the process had to change when I was working for real clients because there was always limited budget to limited time. So you had to really dissect the amount of research to sketching to designing and to production. So I guess that really changed the mindset of how I approach design now. And also it changes from designing a logo to a typeface to space to photography to websites. I'm always thinking about the budget and the timeline and the audience that it has to meet. That kind of changed in the way that I design things right now.
And so how about in the future? How do you see that kind of evolving past now?
So in the future, I think I'm still gonna be challenged with the budget issue, especially talking about the Korean clients, because they always come in with the really limited budget that is always challenging. And being able to challenge them back to make them use more budget in creating the best contents for them to be able to be different from the other competitors is always a challenge for our studio. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we always have to face for other, young designers that are going to emerge into the real design fields. Because if we don't challenge the clients of today, right now, then the younger generations are going to suffer it again. So I think we keep pushing the clients to meet like 50-50 consensus instead of them really overruling our creativity.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think as designers, a lot of times we think about our challenges with clients being around things like having a consensus on the creative vision, but actually something very practical and utilitarian like budget
Right.
kind of has this ripple effect across all of the functions that you do as a designer in
Right.
business. So that's a really interesting point. But yeah, thank you again
Okay.
for joining me on Design Notes.
All right, thanks for having me.
Keep an eye on design.google/podcast so you don't miss our next episode with independent designer Ryan Snelson. In the episode, we explore the relationship between product strategy and design execution, the history of the design of MySpace, and the unique aesthetic Snelson has developed with projects like Flashback Sticker Attack. You can subscribe to Design Notes on Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.